get to some NFL stories of the day because Russell Wilson is now a Denver Bronco. Now, on Tuesday, I played NFL QB Free Agency 2022 edition, and I said, will Seattle move off of Russell Wilson? In 2021, I thought they would. I thought it was time for Pete Carroll to move on from Russell Wilson. Seattle was outdated. They didn't have a great offensive line anymore. They had no tight end. They had no defense. They needed to move forward. I know it wasn't a tough division, but I thought he could have been traded to Chicago or Vegas for Derek Carr. You start your rebuild. Instead, Seattle held on to him for one more year, and I thought, well, now the division's changed. Arizona got a lot better. San Francisco got better. Obviously, the Rams went out. They won the Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford. They upgraded their quarterback. Is Seattle really going to finally trade Russell Wilson when it felt like people were giving good offers and Seattle just wasn't taking them? Now, whether that was because of Russell Wilson's trade clause or just Seattle declining the trade is unknown, but they finally got a deal done with the Denver Broncos. And I will say this, I think it is a win-win for both sides. As I've said previously over the last year, I think Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks, first of all, I think they're doomed. This may be Pete Carroll's last year in the National Football League before he gets fired, because you've got three great offensive coaches in that NFC. Pete Carroll is the only defensive coach in the NFC West. And Seattle is now clearly the fourth worst team in that division. And you just cannot be the fourth best team in that division with those quarterbacks. But they did get, Shelby Harris is a pretty good defensive lineman from the Broncos. They got Noah Fant, who if I was Denver, I would have not given up. I know that they love that Albert O. I'm not going to say his last name because it's really long. Backup tight end last year. They really like him, but I haven't seen much out of him. I'm not a big believer in him. Maybe he'll be great with Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson makes every tight end great. I would have rather have, if I was Seattle anyways, one of those receivers, whether it was Sutton or Judy or one of the young kids in KJ Hamler, than Noah Fant. But they did get Noah Fant, and they did get quarterback Drew Lock in the deal. Drew Lock may or may not be their starting quarterback next season. They may go in the draft, or they may decide to wait till next year when next year's quarterback class is a lot better. But this year feels like a wash year for Seattle. But at least they got 2 first-round picks. At least they got 2 seconds. At least they got a fifth back. They got a couple of players. They can build with Shelby Harris. They can build with Noah Fant. They did release Bobby Wagner. They could even trade Jamal Adams and get another first-round pick and start building that defense back up, a defense that has very little to no pass rush, no secondary, and no linebackers at this point. They're just a complete rebuild on defense. They need help everywhere, and they're going to have to start doing it with the draft. Yes, they need offensive linemen. You can always pick up some offensive linemen in free agency. I know there's some talk about trading away DK Metcalf. If I was Seattle, I would not trade away DK Metcalf. To me, he is an absolute weapon. You still have Tyler Lockett there. You still have Noah Fant there. There are good weapons on this team. If you can go out in free agency and in the draft and bolster your offensive line. Outside of left tackle, you need help everywhere at that position group. And then use those draft picks like Carolina did a couple of years ago and start rebuilding that defense. If you hit on those draft picks, you will be good, and you could get back into contention in a couple of years if you get the right quarterback. So I see the plan of attack there. Now, Denver, they were clearly fourth in their division at quarterback, and their division includes Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Derek Carr. They did not want to be at a clear disadvantage for 6 out of their 17 games on their schedule. They thought they had the weapon in Cortland Sutton, in Jerry Jeudy, in KJ Hamler, in Tim Patrick, in Javonte Williams at running back. They got Bradley Chubb. They got Patrick Surtain on the back end. They got a couple other nice players on that defense, including safety Justin Simmons. They felt like they were a quarterback away. They didn't care about the draft picks. They said, we trust our drafting in later rounds. We need a quarterback to keep up with Kansas City, the Chargers, who just got Khalil Mack, by the way. They're adding to their pass rush, putting Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa on the same side is going to be scary for teams, especially Kansas City. Their offensive line is not that great. They went out, they got Russell Wilson, they went aggressive, and now Derek Carr is the worst quarterback in the AFC West, and he's a top 12 quarterback in the NFL. If you think about it, next year, one of these quarterbacks is not going to make the playoffs, whether it be Derek Carr, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence, Ryan Tannehill, Mac Jones. Some of these quarterbacks are not going to make the playoffs. It's how loaded the AFC is. And typically in free agency, unless you're Denver when you hit on Peyton Manning, or you're Tampa when you hit on Tom Brady, usually free agency does not work out. Usually it's been the trades at the quarterback position, whether it was Matthew Stafford last year with the Rams, or this year it's Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos. Russell Wilson, I still believe, can be a top 5 quarterback in this league. Now, Justin Herbert is certainly special with the Chargers. Chargers have some good people on their team. We already mentioned Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Derwin James, Melvin Ingram on the defensive end. You add in the receivers, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, running back. That team is loaded. Not to mention Kansas City. That AFC West, it's not a foregone conclusion the Chiefs are going to win that division next year. I think Denver is legit. I think it is hard for a team to play in Denver. I think Denver's going to have a great home field advantage. Russell Wilson finally gets an offensive coach coming from that Green Bay Packers scheme in Nathaniel Hackett. Now, do I think Denver's going to win the division? I do not. I still think Patrick Mahomes and I think the Chargers somewhat will be competing for that division, but Denver will be an absolutely scary wild card team like the San Francisco 49ers were last season. And you guys are going to see, like we did last year at the start of April, at my end of my tenure on Black Squirrel Radio, you can start kind of basing off the quarterbacks in the division, who's going to win each division, and based off the schedule, even before when it comes out, who feels like a playoff team. You're going to see here right after free agency, it's next week, what's going to happen, because you're going to start seeing which teams are for real next year and which teams are pretenders. The AFC right now seems really strong compared to the NFC.